My name is Benny Johnson. As some of you know, I've been struggling with addiction. However, I decided to change my life and went into recovery. I've started this podcast 90 Days Clean, and I want to take you along in my journey. What does lie ahead of me? Let me be frank, I do not know. Will I ever drink again? I do not know. This is how Stairway to Redemption was born. It is my search for answer in a real-time process of what is going to work for me. It is then my aspiration to help you figure out what's going to work for you. It is our journey together. Welcome back to another episode of Stairway to Redemption. This week, I have the privilege of interviewing Coach Matt, or Coach Tees. Matt is a man with multiple hats: firefighter, fitness coach, life coach, a recovered addict himself. He's here today to share with us his story and the benefits of fitness in recovery. I give you guys Matt. How are you doing today, Coach?
I'm doing well, thank you. Happy to be here. Happy to be a part of. I'm excited to be interviewed. I'm excited to have this conversation. I'm excited to talk about the benefits of fitness and recovery and how they come together.
Okay, awesome. So here at Stairway to Redemption, our listener know we like to start with the state of the mind address. What's going on in your world lately?
So currently, I just celebrated 7 years of sobriety.
Woo!
Which is a wonderful thing, right? Claps around. I'm getting ready, and in about 8 hours, I'll be heading to the airport for me and my lady to fly to Bali, Indonesia for 2 weeks. Which is a wonderful. Yeah, it's going to be a long flight, but as far as like in my personal world. It's just the continuing the growth process, right? Growing as a man in recovery, growing as a partner to someone, growing as a father, growing as an entrepreneur, growing as a coach, always learning, always trying to consume information, always trying to learn from my mistakes, always trying to look inward to see how I can be the best version of myself.
Great, awesome, man. Bali, Indonesia. Yo, I've never been to Southeast Asia, man. That should be fun. Like, I'm jealous now. So let's talk about your story. Could you tell us your story, Coach? How did you fall into addiction, and how did you prevail?
So I come from a long line of alcoholics and addicts. Both my maternal grandparents. My father was a crack addict. He was killed when I was young. I grew up in the South Bronx in the late 80s, early 90s when crack and heroin were everywhere. And I'm a child of the DARE program, which was all these commercials about don't do drugs and stay away from drugs and this is your brain on drugs and all of this.
The pan and the frying egg. Yeah.
Yeah. You remember those? This is your brain on drugs, right?
Yeah, this is your brain on drugs.
And so, I knew to stay away from it, right? Like I didn't really go anywhere near it. I had no desire to. And then I became like a preteen teenager, and I started out smoking weed and drinking a little bit. But it didn't have the massive negative effect until I was well into my 20s. In like my mid-20s, I remember I was home one day and I said, what would make cleaning this house a little more fun is if I was Hennessy. And so I started drinking some Hennessy, and I remember my girlfriend at the time showed up and she's like, "Why are you drunk at 2:00 in the afternoon?" And I couldn't explain it myself. Mm-hmm. And then I started working for New York City EMS for the fire department. And it just became a part of the culture. We went to happy hour, and happy hour became midnight, and midnight became who knows when I'm coming home. And happy hour on Thursday became Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then before I knew it, I was drinking almost every day. And my mom, who, had an alcoholic mother, who had an alcoholic father, who had a drug addicted man for many years in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
She was the first person to say, I have a problem with alcohol. And I was like, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't need a drink to get out of bed. I'm not on the Bowery. I'm not brown bagging it. I don't drink during the day. All this other stuff these ideas that I thought were what an alcoholic was. And but I went to my first 12-step meeting, and I blamed everything on my girlfriend. I walked in the meeting. I said, I'm an alcoholic. And if my girlfriends would behave, then I wouldn't drink the way that I do. And nobody applauded my profound spiritual contribution to the meeting. And so I walked out. And I didn't find my way back to that realm for another 3 years. I kept, lowering my standards. Alcohol kept lowering my standards faster than I could keep up. I would tell myself, if it interfered with this or that, I'll stop. If it interfered with my relationship, I'll stop. If it interfered with my relationship with my son, I'll stop. If it interfered with work, I'll stop. And then it interfered with work in a big way. And so I had to go seek some help.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to be sober. But I couldn't get the information that I was receiving to make the trip from my head to my heart. Right? I wanted to intellectualize everything. I wanted to think through everything. I wanted to read the book and find holes in it. I wanted to be smarter than, or better than, or be able to beat this thing the way I'd kind of like skated through most of my life with minimal effort. I thought I could do that with alcoholism, and any real alcoholic learns very quickly that that's not something you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And so in May of 2016, after 4 months of the worst run of my life, of me, at 31 years old, trying drugs I'd never tried, and drinking every single day, right? All of the things that the people who'd been trying to help me told me would happen if I tried to do this thing on my own happened. And the last standard that I kept was that I never wanted to be my dad. And at the time, I was a single dad to a 6-year-old boy, and I couldn't get out of bed one morning. And normally, throughout, no matter how bad my drinking got, I always got him to school pressed and ready to go, fed, homework done, looking presentable. And this morning, he had to get himself ready for school for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And this thought kind of came to me that I can only attribute to something greater than me. And it said, if you don't get up and do something, you're going to leave that boy with the same fate that you had when you were his age. And my whole life had been defined by me being a victim of my father's death. I was a victim of it. I was resentful at him for it. I was scared that I'd never be able to be a dad because I didn't have a dad. And that scared me enough to make some phone calls and go away to treatment.
Okay.
And yeah.
So like when you went to treatment, that was like inpatient. You did what, a 28-day program?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when you got back, like, was it, what were the challenges that you faced when you got back? Because I imagine, like they say, like alcohol is not the problem. Usually it's our solution. What did you notice about yourself that you had to work on in order to stay sober?
Well, it was what I learned in treatment for the first time was what it really meant to be an alcoholic.
Mm.
Like how I was physically, mentally, spiritually different from the non-alcoholic. And how that if I could work on the spiritual side of myself, the physical and the mental would straighten themselves out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I tried spirituality before then. In other attempts to get sober, I would, I grew up in the Catholic Church. I was a practicing born again Christian as an adult, and I would I would go straight to the church because it was in my belief that, well, if the 12-step programs are telling me that I need to find God, then I'll just cut out the middleman. I'll go straight to where I know God hangs out. And I would leave the church and I'd go get drunk.
Yeah.
And so this was the first time they'd been talking about having a relationship with God or with a higher power or with something. And that was different. And I recognized that what really separated me from being the person that I wanted to be, the kind of person who could stay sober, was that I was full of anger and fear.
I see. So like you were like
That was what,
basically, yeah, you were like if I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, you were not spiritually fit.
no.
Yeah.
No.
Like, yeah, I get it. Um, Interesting story. Um, let's talk a little bit about your profession. Like you told us, you started as being an EMS firefighter. And
Yeah.
I noticed by going in the rooms of Alcoholic Anonymous how common addiction is among the first responder. First of all, let me say all the 9/11 first responder guys that I know, they're all fucked up. Like, I'm not going easy on them. They saw some shit and they will never be the same again. They are better, they're working on themselves, but like those aside who they made me realize how many first responders, whether they're like EMT, firefighter, even cops, suffer like quietly, from addiction. Because I blame partly TV, like because they depicts those shows always depict cops and firefighters as badasses that never suffer, that nothing scares. Um, how would you explain the disparity between uh that fiction and the reality or what? Because I'm sure like you've seen some stuff that definitely didn't help you staying sober, right?
So no. So there, with the first responder community, there is a massive enabling that takes place.
Okay.
Right? Like drinking is such a part of the culture that anything that results in over drinking or any kind of alcoholic behavior is very much forgiven.
Mm.
And guys kind of look out for each other when it comes to drinking, and more so than anything else. If you screwed up your schedule, then you're an asshole. But if you screwed up your schedule because you were out drinking and you picked up a lady friend, then all is well. Right. And so
yeah.
And so it creates an environment where it robs an alcoholic of their bottom.
Wow.
Right. Because continuously they continuously evade consequences because their peers create an environment where there are no consequences for your drinking.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Do you?
Right?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I would say on the other point about the fiction about us not suffering or not experiencing trauma or not being affected by our jobs, there is some part of us that learns, at least in my experience and the guys that I've worked with, that gets desensitized to what we see over time. Like it just becomes a part of the job. But then there are some things that really affect us, like, and for me, it's always children. I'm perfectly okay, to handle anything emotionally as long as children aren't involved. As soon as children are involved, it gets a little heavy. But also the other part of it, I think that doesn't get talked about enough is the long hours, the lack of sleep, the high demand. When everybody's running out of a burning building, we're walking in. When everybody's walking away from a car wreck, we're walking towards it. Like we are the guys that are constantly relied on to show up when things have really gone haywire.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I cannot imagine. Like you said earlier that like the environment among first responder is very enabling when it comes to drinking. Do you think it is so they can use alcohol to cope with what they see
Oh
or what
yes,
they deal with.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you had a rough
Drinking.
day, it was a rough day, you just like they let you, instead of they let you process it through like drinking.
Yeah, everything is processed through drinking. Right? Somebody dies, we go drinking. If some softball, we go drinking. If there was a rough day at work, they go drinking. If it was a great day at work, they go drinking.
Yeah. Like and when you ready to seek help, how how can I how is uh the attitude from your unions? Are your unions concerned with preserving the image of the profession, or they're actually helping their members seek help?
No, so at least within our department,
Mm-hmm.
um, they they do a really good job of helping us.
Okay.
The union and the job. If you admit to the job that you have a problem, uh, particularly before there's some sort of consequence, um, you can go away to treatment, no questions asked. Full for all expenses paid, and you'll still receive your paycheck while you're there. For a 30-day program, sometimes longer, and it's completely confidential. Like no one in your firehouse knows where you are. They
Mm-hmm.
just know that you're offline and and they have therapy that's available to us for free. They have you can go back to we have our own in-house outpatient treatment center that you can
Oh,
go
okay.
back to whenever you want. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. I didn't know you guys had your own outpatient program. That's pretty cool. Like you like because I mean, you personally, what did you do when you got out of inpatient? Did you use those resources?
So they don't let you back into the wild fresh from treatment.
Yeah.
They send you to the outpatient for about 6 weeks before you're let back into like daily firefighting life.
Mm-hmm. And I've always wondered, do you guys get psych evaluation so often just to make sure that you're not breaking down, or like you still, is it a thing that they do among firefighters and
Yeah.
responders?
Yeah. So once a year, we have an annual medical where they do a full physical check.
Mm-hmm.
But part of that physical check is you get a check-in with one of the therapists. And they ask you the questions about depression and suicide and stress and all of that stuff. And also a couple times a year, they're usually retired guys who volunteer within the department will come by the firehouses and give some sort of presentation and then ask if anybody needs to talk or wants to talk, or they'll give out business cards and say, if you want to make a phone call later anonymously, you can absolutely call and talk to somebody. So
And
they're really good about that.
that's great. And what is usually the attitude of your peers, or like among the atmospheres, or in your environment, if somebody decide to talk? Are they seen as like soft, or like, what's the attitude toward? Is there like a omerta, or is there like a code of silence, or is it, people are like willingly talking about it?
No, I think the that kind of keeping it all boxed, like if you speak that makes you, being vulnerable is somehow weak
Mm-hmm.
or cowardly, it's long gone. I think
Okay.
in the experience that I've had, like it's a common conversation of like, hey man, if you're really going through it, maybe you should call the counseling unit.
Mm-hmm.
When I was going through it, it was suggested to me, like, hey man, if you think you got a problem with alcohol, maybe you should make that phone call. Like they're really good about helping you out.
I see. One last question before we move in onto another topic. Um, how would you accurately describe the job of first responder, and how much um tiring and demanding it is on someone's mental health?
So I think that the first responder in any uniform
Mm-hmm.
is going to be an incredibly stressful job. aside from the long hours and the pressure of the job, um, I think that you also have this persona that you have to back to the public constantly. There is a pressure to be one of the brotherhood and always look out for each other and be able to have each other's back, um, and then you're just experiencing a ton of trauma every day, right? Like you show up when things go wrong. People don't call us because it's a beautiful sunny Tuesday and they just want firefighters to hang out, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
there's gas leaking in the home, their car crashed, something's on fire, right? Like like their house is collapsing, something. So it's always somebody's nightmare
Mm-hmm.
that gets us to their home, and that's not always good, and you have to do your job with efficiency and with a leveled head, and also still have empathy and compassion for the people that you're helping.
That's true. Empathy and compassion. That's sometimes hard to always carry because I have a friend. She's a EMS, first responder, and she sometimes I try to pick her brain a little bit. She talks about being desensitized to things, but she tells me especially with the epidemic of fentanyl, when she has to like revive or narcan so many people and they have kids and they don't have the shit together, sometimes she's just either like really cynical of the world, but she's like it's hard not to have a judgment about our society. Right. So like let's move on about fitness training. How did you become a fitness trainer, and what's the importance of you working out in your recovery?
So I've been a fitness trainer longer than I've been a firefighter.
Oh, okay. That I didn't know.
So summer of 2010, I had put on some weight and I didn't like it. So I had put on some weight in 2010 that I like, and I knew nothing about fitness. I've been rock climbing since I was 19.
Okay.
And just rock climbing kept me in shape. Hiking out there with the big old backpack, climbing up and down in the heat, kept me in all the shape that I needed. But because I was in paramedic school and I was working and I now had a baby, there was no time for rock climbing. And so I started with I came home one night and I just ran a lap around this park near my house, which was 1/3 of a mile.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 2 dogs at the time. I took the dogs with me. I ran and I started just drinking water instead of, I used to drink Snapples and sodas. And so I started drinking water. And then I started running as many laps as I could each night through that park. And for the first month, that's all I did. And I lost 10 pounds.
Okay.
Then I started reading about nutrition and I started reading about fitness. And then I had a friend who was into the gym. He started taking me with him and teaching me the basics of lifting. I've been into martial arts most of my life. I hadn't done it in my 20s. I got back into martial arts. And so I went from 215 pounds of no muscle tone whatsoever. It was all in my gut and in my throat and my neck here, to 169 pounds, where I competed in the jiu-jitsu tournament in December. So it was about 6 months.
Ooh.
Hard work, and then I never looked back. And so that February, I started training people. I spent that whole 6 months learning everything that I could possibly learn about training. And that February, I started training my friends because we were all preparing to go into the fire academy. So I started training my friends, and we started running and doing a lot of like CrossFit and CrossFit style exercises, HIIT exercises. And so I had a friend who had just gotten back from Iraq, and he was big and bulky, but he had no conditioning. And so I started to train him on conditioning. And I loved it. And I love doing it. I enjoyed doing it. And so that's how I got into fitness. And I never looked back. I've always been into fitness since then.
Like, yeah, that's awesome.
Although,
go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, although my last relapse, the one that got me to inpatient treatment, for that 4 months, I barely hit the gym. And it was the first time since I'd started my fitness journey that I hadn't. and I was 60, I was 160 pounds. I'm 215 pounds now with less than 10% body fat. And when I left for treatment, I was 160 pounds.
That's definitely a journey there. Like, that's impressive, man. I see you, like, this full disclosure, we have a mutual friend who's also in recovery. Shout out Katie, who like put me in touch with you because you are her coach. And the thing we have all in common here is how important working out and fitness is to our recovery. I run into the issue sometimes, especially with people in a room who are not seeing how beneficial taking care of your body is to your mind too, right? For example, I also do martial art, I kickboxing. When somebody once told me, like, yeah, Benny, kickboxing is fun, but you should come to the rooms more. My initial reaction was to tell that person to fuck off, how how do you tell somebody, right? How do you explain to your peers who are in recovery the importance of working out? How do you make them get it?
So I don't stress the importance of fitness in the first year of recovery.
Okay.
Let's get sober. Once we've got a handle on that, then we have to start working on the physical. Right? Because if I'm going to work spiritually on a disease that's trying to kill me, it means that I spent years running my body into the ground.
Yeah.
Right. And so I get sober to live a long and happy life. Right. I didn't get sober to then just, go from AA meeting to AA meeting, right? Hiding out from the world and being spiritual for 60 minutes and then doing nothing else with my life the other 23 hours of the day.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I learned in recovery is that everything that I've been given is a gift. Everything. Everything. This conversation is a gift. My daughter is a gift, right? Everything is a gift. Now, also, that means that this body is a gift. And so I should take care of it. I'm only going to get one.
Yeah.
Right. I should. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to get into the shape to get on stage and compete in a bodybuilding competition.
Yeah.
But we should take care of it. We should push ourselves to the limit. And I think often, and you get it, but I think often what's overlooked is the mental benefit of rigorous physical exercise.
Yes.
Right. If I come into the reason I come in here and if you ask me when I got here, like, hey, you're going to be willing to like pray every day? You're going to be willing to meditate? You're going to be willing to write inventory about all your deepest, darkest secrets and your fears and your resentments? Are you going to be able to share that with somebody? You're going to go out and make amends? So I'll be like, no, that's crazy. Why would I do that? But I do it. And then I recognize the spiritual benefit of that. So I tell people to take the same approach with your physical recovery, right? You don't think that you'll be able to run a marathon. You don't think that you'll be able to lift a certain amount of weight. You don't think you'll be able to finish a whole yoga class, whatever it is. Yeah. But push your body the same way you pushed your spirit, almost as an act of gratitude for having a body that can move.
Yeah.
Right. And when I do that, when I challenge myself beyond what I thought my limits were, I get high. Right. I get dopamine hits. I get all sorts of stuff. Right. Like every time I hit a weight that I never thought I'd be able to lift, every time I run a distance I didn't think I could. Right. And that's part of the fun of being a coach, is that being able to hold people's hands as they do that. Right. Like Katie's a perfect example. When she got with me, she didn't think she looked the way she does, and she's in the best shape of her life.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't do that. I just guided her. Right. She did the work.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're totally right. What about this? I want to run this idea by you. So, what if rehab center, inpatient centers, right? You know how they force you to go to class, right? What if they had more emphasis on a physical activity, like mandatory yoga, unless you have like some health conditions? What if they put the same effort of like those class on CBT or like dealing with trauma? Or what if they put the same effort into something physical, right? what do you think about that? I think it will have a lot of positive. Me personally, I think it will have a lot of positive because where I went inpatient, yes, we had yoga, we had Pilates, we had physical activities, but they were like too small for everybody to be able to join. So it became on a voluntary basis, and not everybody was jumping to get those opportunities. Would you like see a place that will like make it mandatory?
I think that's a wonderful idea. I think that so where I went, it wasn't mandatory, but they did have a fitness center.
Yeah.
You did have access to exercise equipment. They did have yoga classes that you could take, but none of it was mandatory. And you found that everyone who used it experienced almost instant benefits from it.
Yes.
Right? Like there is a marked improvement in your mental health when you push yourself physically. That's not theory. And so I think that having someone, right, like incorporate into their daily life, if I'm going to, right, the ultimate goal of recovery is to improve my life in every aspect that I can.
Yes.
Right. Let's start with creating a system in my life where I don't have a desire to drink anymore. Cool. Mm-hmm. But I also want to get better physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all of these things. And so it's of equal importance.
Yes.
Right. I've posted on Instagram before, like, don't discount the mental benefits of a trip to the gym. Because I think that's what people think about, like the physical pain of it.
Yes.
And what I tell them is that that's the discomfort necessary for growth. Right. You're going to, in any growth process, in any area of life, in order to grow, there's going to be some measure of discomfort. Physical growth is no different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you couldn't say it any better, but like one thing you said earlier, like you said like any aspect of life, whether it's like spiritual stuff, and it brings me to the idea of balance. Even if we preach right now the importance of working physically, there still needs some balance, right? We're not advocating to just go to the gym like, I don't know, like 8 hours a day or something. No, that's not like the idea that I'm trying to convey here, but more of an idea of balance. But earlier you said to not focus on like the fitness aspect in your first year. Why a year? Why that? Do you know why that time frame was that?
So I would say that like the primary focus when somebody is initially getting sober should be getting sober and nothing else. If you make time, like for me, fitness was never not a part of my sobriety.
Okay.
Right. Like as soon as I got back from treatment, I was right back in the gym. Right. And but that's because in order for me to experience some level of normalcy, fitness has to be.
I see. All right.
Right. But some people who are just getting sober for the first time in their first year, they might not have the bandwidth to be adding all of these new things, right? Let's focus solely on getting you through the steps, on getting you sober, on having a spiritual experience. And that might not take a year, and it shouldn't take a year, if I'm being honest. It shouldn't take you a year to get through all 12 steps. But at the very least, until we're done with the steps, then let's focus on incorporating a fitness regimen in your life, at least for the guys that I work with. Because I get a lot of guys who come who want to work with me, and they think that they're going to somehow get some fitness advice on the side of the spiritual sponsorship. Yeah. And it's like, let's focus on this first, and then we'll think about what to do in the gym.
I see. I get it. Last question before I give you the floor. So what is you personally, your support network? Like what part of program but what if you want to disclose that? What program are you a part of?
So I'm a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. I qualify for a bunch of Anonymous, but my primary focus is Alcoholics Anonymous. I find that I was promised a relationship with a God that could solve all my problems, and that's what I got when I came in. And my support network is people in the rooms. I'm very active in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was just down at a Florida convention for young people. I was one of the speakers there. I have my home group is a Zoom meeting that meets 7 days a week with over 200 people every night from all over the world. You know, I'm Alcoholics Anonymous saved my life. Nothing that I would have nothing that I have today if I did not get sober. And so the best thing that I can do is try and uphold the love and the compassion and everything that I've received from the people in Alcoholics Anonymous who did it expecting nothing in return. And all I can do is the same forward and pay them back.
Awesome. I agree. All right. So now the floor is yours. Tell us where to find you, what you have cooking, like any message you want to say.
So the best place to find me is on Instagram at Coach Tiz, where I'm happy to talk fitness, recovery, or anything in between. Where you can also find out information about my coaching services, or see just what's going on in my life. I kind of treat Instagram as my own personal reality show. You'll see my relationship, you'll see my family, you'll see my job, you'll see me train clients in the gym, you'll see me being silly, you'll see me traveling, all of those things. And I think if I had to give a message to the masses before we close shop here, I'd say you are enough.
Oh, wow.
You're imperfect and enough at the same time. Awesome. Right. And that goes for every area of life.
That's dope. Yeah, beautifully said. All right, guys. Thank you very much again, Coach, for being my guest, and I will see you guys for the conclusion.
All right. So that's it, folks. Big thank you to Coach Matt for being such a wonderful guest. His take on addiction among first responders definitely increased the respect I have for them. I attach his Instagram to the description in case you are interested in getting in touch with him, whether it's just as like coaching or like fitness training. So as always, follow us on social media, support us on Patreon at patreon.com/stairwaytoredemption. And guys, I will see you next week. Bye.